So now we continue a tradition, now 12 years old, of selecting an Academy alum to deliver a commencement address. And by coincidence, this is the third speaker from the class of 1991 chosen. You might also notice that our board chair, Adam Honegger, comes from the same class. We're going to put a moratorium on the class of 1991 after this year, but I can only imagine how wonderful and lively life must have been around here when these folks were seniors. As you've seen in the program, Mira has a national and international mark with her writing, accumulating for now with the publication of The Sleepwalker's Guide to Dancing in 2014. A very lively soul, as I could tell immediately while getting to know her a bit this year and then again last night at dinner. Mira has the wonderful ability to put life into language, which then in turn informs and enlivens the lives of her readers. Back in the day, in 1991, her senior appraisal writer said that Mira transcends the usual and described her as original, independent, curious, and mature. The writer goes on to say, writing is central to Mira. You know, as I read senior appraisals every year with our students and they listen, there always seems to be a somewhat of an understanding that any predictions about the future in the appraisals are still up for grabs. But how telling that statement was about writing in Mira as it stood out in her appraisal and now defines her life. The appraisal ends with this. Mira has reached a point where the life of the mind has taken on increased importance. We are delighted with the path she has chosen. And we are still delighted by the path of Mira, and we look forward to hearing her comments today. Mira Jacob.
So I have to tell you guys that I always thought if I ever came back to the Academy, it would be as the front woman for a punk band. Not like I spent a lot of time thinking about that, because who would do that, but we would have been named Pegasister. So this is really great because it's practically the same thing. So first, some congratulations. Congratulations, class of 2015. Last night at dinner, I was so moved by the stories that I heard about you that I felt like coming to each of your houses and waking you up to hug you, which would have been so inappropriate and creepy. So congratulations on that not happening. Congratulations also to all the family and the friends and the teachers and the staff that brought you here today. It's such a great day for all of us. Congratulations also to the Academy on its 60th anniversary. Hallmark tells me that's the diamond anniversary. I don't have a present for you. But I can't tell you guys how honored I am to be here today. The Academy had a huge impact on my life. This is the place that some incredibly wise and loving teachers shaped me. It's the place that I met my future husband, Jed. It's the place that I learned that I would never actually be good in French. That's true. I have to admit, though, I feel a little bit silly standing up here because I am not really the person anyone would have pegged to be coming back here to do this. In fact, I'm pretty sure that when I graduated, I was voted most likely to serve as a cautionary tale. I've really earned that title, by the way. I really earned that one. And to be clear, I've just come off a really great year in which a novel that I spent 10 years writing finally went out into the world, and some really nice people said some really nice things about it. But I've never thought of myself as a particularly good role model unless what you're trying to do is fearlessly try new dessert or grow eyebrows. In fact, I have a true story. When I called my mother to tell her, she goes, "You? Really?" Mothers. So when Andy asked me to do this, I remember having this realization that this was it. This was the last time my class was going to be in one place. And we had all been fused together for so long, and we had moved from childhood to adolescence together, and now suddenly we were going to break apart. And I started panicking a little bit because, especially, it's funny, because in that final year I was dying to get out, but then suddenly here it was, and I was at the brink of moving on, and I could barely breathe. And so I started telling myself the thing that I always did when I panicked, which was that I was bigger than that feeling. Because I had a plan. There was no need to panic because I was going to be a writer. Oh, I forgot to tell you guys the title of my speech. The Futility of Plans by Mira Jacob. I know, that's not what you want to hear on graduation day when you put all your ducks in a row and done whatever you're supposed to do with ducks after that. Because I remember that feeling of graduating from the academy, all those papers written and teachers pleased and grades conquered and munch pudding eaten. And these are all incredible things that you have done, for sure. And barring Andy absconding with your diplomas, you're going to be getting one of those in a few minutes. But this is the blessing of high school, really. It's this moment in your life when what you achieve and what you receive are really aligned. You follow the plan, you get the job done, you get the appropriate reward. It is a beautiful thing, and it is completely misleading. I'm telling you this because you see someone like me up here talking about a great year with a novel and how I wanted to be a writer when I went here, and you assume naturally that I set out with a goal and I achieved it, and life works like that. But in fact, if we were to call the woman that I was 3 years ago, well, first of all, she would totally freak out because honestly, why do you ever hear from your future self unless the world is ending and the only one who could save it was you, right? But anyway, once she got over the whole, no, the world is fine, I just want to talk part, she would admit that she was in the biggest free fall of her life. At that point, I had been living in New York for over a decade, working corporate jobs to support my writing habit. By the way, this is what most artists in New York actually do. I just feel like I should tell you we all have day jobs, just in case you think everyone is out there Neil Patrick Harrising it up. Not happening. So I worked as a web editor from 8 in the morning to 8 at night with a short break to see my son. And from 11 p.m. to 1 a.m., I wrote my novel. Or if I'm being honest here, I stared at my computer and occasionally got out a good sentence. And it was hard, for sure, but it was not unsustainable. And I knew, in my gut, I knew that if I could just keep going for a year or two, I was going to get that novel done. And then one day I went into work, and my boss, the CEO, sat me down, and he told me he was letting me go. Actually, he told me he was replacing me with 5 social media interns. And I did what most people do in that situation, which is I quietly left the office, and then I went out on the street, and I just fell apart. And I called my husband, and I met him under the Brooklyn Bridge, and I remember telling him, I'm so sorry, I failed us. I failed. And I was just humiliated. And I kept thinking, weirdly enough, about how I had gone into work that day in my favorite pants and shirt. Like somehow the fact that I had believed in myself just that morning was the worst part. So Jed and I sat there and we were staring at the East River for a little while because New York is a kind of tough town to stay afloat in. And then after a little bit, he turned to me and said, I think this is maybe a sign that you just need to finish your novel. Take a couple months. Okay, so there are 2 versions of this story, you guys. There's the one that I always tell journalists because it sounds so awesome, and it is, and then I got my novel done, and then I sold it. Hurrah! Cue fireworks and angels in the heavens singing Shake It Off. But the other version, the longer one, is the one I'm going to tell you guys today because I remember graduating from this place and feeling like everyone else in my class was so smart and impressive and on their way to success, and I needed to be too, because what happens if I didn't succeed like everyone else, and what happens if you go out into the world and you fail big time? I totally want to retitle this speech. What happens when you go out into the world and fail big time? By Mira Jacob. It's what we all fear, right? Falling flat on our face in public, making such a spectacle of ourselves that it confirms every bad thing anyone has ever thought of us, every bad thing we have ever thought about ourselves, being that person. Well, I was that person. And I wish I could say that this was just one low point in an otherwise flawless trajectory, but the truth is, at the point that I got laid off, I was already pretty low. I won't get all into it because Andy's only given me 15 minutes, but I will say that once upon a time, I had planned to move to New York and be a great writer. And then I got there, and it was so much harder than I thought it was going to be. But still, I started writing my great novel, and it was going to be about a father losing his grip on the world. And then in real life, my real father, got cancer. But I was going to keep going, because my father was going to get better, and I was going to keep writing no matter what, because what would even be the point if those things didn't happen? And then my father died, and all my words just went away for years. And then when they came back, I was slower than I had been before. I was so slow, actually, that a lot of times I wondered if I was ever going to finish a chapter, let alone a whole novel. So the day after I was laid off, I went and I sat down with my computer in a coffee shop, and everything got really quiet, like unbearably quiet. And here is the thing about that kind of quiet. It is so uncomfortable. Like, I had the urge to do anything else when that was happening. And actually, for 2 days, I did nothing but check Facebook every 5 minutes to see if, like, God had liked anything I posted. And then for the 2 days after that, I shopped for the perfect lawn furniture, which would have been a totally sad activity even if I had had a lawn. Yeah. And then it hit me that I could spend the rest of my life doing this. Aside. So, you know that thing that you do when you have that funny feeling inside of you and you get on your phone or on your laptop or on your whatever device and you start clicking from place to place to place, and that feeling is growing inside your chest, and soon you are looking at videos of cats dressed as sharks riding vacuum cleaners. And that feeling, right, that emptiness in you, that kind of creeping weirdness in your soul, it is still there. Well, guess what? It's still there because, and this is important, there is nothing you can click on to ease that feeling. Nothing. I promise you. Because what you are looking for at that moment is not a clickable outcome. What you are looking for is your life. So here are 3 other better things to do at that moment. 1, exercise, run or walk or just do anything you need to move your body away from a screen. 2, help someone else, not for points or money, but because you can and because it feels good. 3, use your mind, create something, solve a problem, daydream. Do all 3 at once. I think some people call that writing a novel. And one more thing, as long as I'm the one that's up here, read a novel. No, really, read a novel. It's important. Here's why. I am not a religious person. And if I've got anything close to religious belief in my life, it is this. I think that stories are the one thing that can save us as a species. There's something really beautiful and specific that happens when you open a novel, because whether or not you're aware of it, you've entered a kind of pact with an author. Using their words as a guide, you begin to build a world with your mind. And that world, it only exists for as long as you are reading, for as long as the story is new. Anyone who has ever rationed the pages of a book, you guys have done that, right? You don't want to get to the end, you ration the pages. I see some nods. So you know what I'm talking about, because the minute you shut that book, the world just comes crumbling down. But for as long as it exists, as long as you are in that book, you care about these characters. That is, you care about people that you have never seen before and will never actually meet in your life. And they begin to live inside you. They matter to you. And you have hopes and dreams and wishes for them. And The funny thing about these days is that people seem to believe that reading a novel is some sort of indulgent exercise, like a bath for your mind. The truth is that every time you do that, you bring something real back into the world. And that is the sustained ability to care about a life that is not your own. And when you come back into your world, you look around and you understand how deep and flawed and vulnerable other people are. And that's called compassion. And that thing is the single most beautiful thing that we as humans can offer each other. That thing is the thing that can change the tenor of the entire world. Okay, so unnecessary lawn furniture. Okay, so in the horrible quiet that I was telling you about, I did the only thing that I could do, which is I started writing my book. And to do that, to get to the point where I could really concentrate, I had to dodge my own humiliation. My humiliation would say things to me like, "You have already failed spectacularly in this lifetime. Do you really want to do it again?" And I would shove it aside and keep writing, and at night I would call my mother, who said very helpful things like, "Don't worry, Mira, behind every silver lining there is a cloud." My mother is terrible with American sayings, but she means well. And this incredible thing started to happen, which is that I started to write. Really write. Just write and write and write and write. And it felt so good. It felt like using a muscle that I thought had atrophied. Actually, it felt like sprinting with it. And a lot of things happened from that point on. Obviously, I finished the book, and it sold, and it printed, and now it's on bookshelves. But when I think of what I am most grateful for, it's that moment, when this part of myself that I was sure had been lost forever came back. So in case you think that this is very specific advice for how to write your novel when the chips are down, I assure you that it is not. In fact, I think it's a stretch to call it advice at all. It's more like a many-titled spirit eagle of a thought poem. Something I hope that you will remember should you ever happen to feel like your life is not the thing you thought it was going to be. Or when you strayed so far from the plan that you've almost lost sight of it completely. Or when you wonder if there's a point to any of it. Or when others, perhaps listening to you deliver a graduation speech, begin to wonder if there's any point to it. And there is a point. And the point... I kind of have to, right? The Point Is, by Mira Jacob. The point is that plans are just that, a really good and hopeful wish, but not a map to a guaranteed outcome. The point is that bad moments will happen, and it's not personal. The point is that whoever told you it was important to be a well-rounded person was lying. I know, I didn't set up that point at all, but it's true. Some of the worst people I've ever met are well-rounded. Be something else. The point is, according to my mother, the world eats your oyster. The point is that looking at lawn furniture is way more humiliating than trying for something you really, really want. The point is that should you wake up some morning and realize that it's not going the way you thought it would, keep going. Keep going no matter how silly you might feel, no matter how cautionary the tale you might appear to be to someone else. Because here's the truth. You are the only one that can write your story. And it might have a million weird titles, it might have some awkward asides, it might have some stuff just shoved in there. But it will also surprise you if you let it. And it might just turn out to be better than you ever in your best laid plans could have imagined. And now, because let's face it, this is never going to happen for me any other way, thank you and good night, Albuquerque!